Hey there, and welcome to Lesson 2 in our Linux cybersecurity series. Today we're talking about reconnaissance and footprinting, those crucial early steps in identifying and understanding potential vulnerabilities before a cyber attack or penetration test even begins. These techniques are foundational, and we're going to break them down in the context of Linux. Let's start with our learning goals. We're going to look at what reconnaissance and footprinting really mean, how they differ, why they matter, and how Linux-specific tools play into them. You'll also learn how these methods can be applied in ethical ways to improve security rather than break it. This lesson gives us a roadmap of how attackers, or security professionals, begin to collect information on a target. In a Linux environment, there are some powerful command line tools that make this process both efficient and stealthy. Whether you're protecting your systems or testing their defenses, it starts here. Reconnaissance is all about observing the target without tipping them off. It's like casing a building before a heist, but in our case, it's all above board. You're finding out things like what ports are open, what services are running, what systems are connected, all with tools like Nmap, Netstat, and WHOIS. This information helps form a strategy without making any noise. All right, let's take a closer look at the two main types of reconnaissance you'll come across in cybersecurity, passive and active. Both are valuable, but they serve different purposes depending on what you're trying to accomplish and how stealthy you need to be. Let's start with passive reconnaissance. This is all about gathering information without ever touching the target system directly. You might be browsing through publicly available data, like WHOIS records, DNS information, social media posts, job listings, or even PDFs posted on a company's website. The idea here is to fly completely under the radar. Since you're not interacting with the target systems, there's almost no risk of being detected by intrusion detection systems or firewalls. This method is perfect for the early stages of planning when you just want to build an initial profile of the organization. Then we've got active reconnaissance, which is more hands-on. This is where you start engaging with the system to get more detailed info. You might send pings to see which systems respond, scan ports to discover open services, or use traceroute to map how your packets travel through the network. Tools like Nmap, Netcat, or HPing3 come into play here. Now, Active Recon gives you a much richer view of the network, but it comes with risk. Because you're interacting directly with the target, your actions can be logged or flagged as suspicious. It's louder, but it can reveal things you just can't get passively, like the operating system type or specific software versions in use. In practice, cybersecurity professionals use both methods. You typically begin passively, quietly learning everything you can, then move into active techniques to fill in the gaps. And whether you're an attacker or a defender, understanding both approaches helps you stay one step ahead. For defenders, this means knowing what data is exposed publicly and being prepared to detect any scans or probes that signal something more serious might be. Now let's zoom in on footprinting, which is a more targeted and methodical part of reconnaissance. If reconnaissance is the big picture info gathering, then footprinting is where you roll out the blueprint and start mapping the digital terrain in detail. This step is essential in both ethical hacking and real-world cyber attacks because it reveals how an organization is structured from the outside. From a cybersecurity standpoint, footprinting is crucial because it exposes what a company is unintentionally sharing with the world. You're collecting technical data like domain names, IP address ranges, subdomains, operating systems, open ports, and services. Everything that paints a picture of how the organization's infrastructure is laid out. Once an attacker knows this, they can plan their moves precisely. But here's the thing. Defenders can use this exact same approach to see what attackers would see and fix it before it becomes a problem. In a Linux environment, tools like WHOIS, Dig, NSLOOKUP, and the Harvester are key players. They help uncover DNS records, metadata, and even email addresses or credentials that are accidentally exposed. For instance, a poorly configured DNS server might leak information about internal systems, or a forgotten subdomain might still be connected to sensitive services. That's gold for an attacker, but it's also a red flag for a security team to tighten things up. So, footprinting isn't just about spying, it's about proactive defense. When done ethically, it helps security professionals identify and patch vulnerabilities before anyone malicious can exploit them. It's that first step toward closing the gaps and strengthening your network from the outside in. With passive footprinting, it's all about staying invisible. You use resources like EORHOIS databases, Google searches, even LinkedIn profiles to see who's behind a domain or what technologies they use. It's slow and quiet, but incredibly useful, especially if you want to avoid tripping any intrusion detection systems. Active footprinting, on the other hand, means you're engaging with the system. Tools like Nmap and Netcat help you scan ports, identify services, and even probe for OS versions. This gives you deeper insight, but there's a trade-off. It's more likely to be noticed, so it needs to be used carefully and ethically. Open source intelligence, OSINT, is the art of collecting publicly available data. It's amazing what people leave online. Code repositories, job postings, misconfigured cloud services. Tools like ReconNG and Maltego can automate this. And it's not just for attackers. Defenders use OSINT to figure out what they're exposing to the world. When it comes to gathering intelligence in cybersecurity, WHOIS lookups are one of the first tools you'll reach for. It's like checking the ID of a domain name. You type in something like whoisexample.com, and boom. You get access to registration details like who owns the domain, when it was created, when it expires, and what name servers it's using. Now, from a cybersecurity perspective, this info can be surprisingly useful. Let's say you're investigating a suspicious domain that's part of a phishing campaign. A WHOIS search might show you it's newly registered, or it might be tied to a shady registrar. That's a red flag. Or maybe you're an ethical hacker doing a penetration test, and you use WHOIS to identify which domains are part of your client's digital footprint. That tells you what systems to look into next. WHOIS can also give you hints about how mature or well-managed an organization's web infrastructure is. For instance, if the registrar or contact info hasn't been updated in years, that might point to lax administrative controls, which could reflect larger security issues. Bottom line, WHOIS is simple but powerful. It helps you trace ownership, spot potential threats, and gather evidence about who's running what on the internet. Now let's flip the script and talk about using WHOIS to look up IP addresses instead of domain names. When you run something like WHOIS 8.8.8.8, you're tapping into a database that shows you which organization owns that IP block. So in this case, it would show Google. Why does this matter for cybersecurity? Well, say you're monitoring traffic on your network and you see suspicious activity coming from a specific IP. A quick WHOIS lookup can tell you who's behind it. If it's coming from a major cloud provider like AWS or a telecom company, you might want to dig further or report the behavior. But if it's linked to a country or organization with a history of cybercrime, you know you've got a bigger issue on your hands. WHOIS also helps identify abuse contacts. These are the people or teams responsible for handling suspicious activity. That's a direct line for reporting malicious behavior, which is critical during incident response. And here's something defenders should always consider. Your own organization's IP info is public too. If it's revealing too much or not kept up to date, it might become a leak point for attackers. That's why it's good practice to routinely check your own WAS records and tighten up what's being disclosed. Let's talk about DNS enumeration, which is a super important part of the reconnaissance phase in cybersecurity. DNS, short for Domain Name System, is basically the Internet's address book. It translates human-friendly domain names like example.com into IP addresses that computers use to communicate. DNS enumeration is the process of digging into that system to extract valuable network information. From a cybersecurity standpoint, this can reveal a lot more than you'd expect. You're not just looking up a domain, you're uncovering subdomains, mail servers, name servers, and sometimes even internal IPs or test environments that weren't meant to be public. And that's where things get risky. If a company hasn't locked down their DNS records properly, it could expose parts of their infrastructure to the world, which attackers can then target. For example, if a subdomain like adminexample.com or vpnexample.com is listed, that might lead to a sensitive system. If DNS zone transfers are misconfigured and open to external queries, That could dump a full map of the domain structure right into an attacker's lap. That's a goldmine for planning targeted attacks or phishing campaigns. In Linux, we've got powerful tools for this job: dig, host, and instance lookup. These commands let you pull DNS records and check for misconfigurations. And for defenders, running regular DNS audits using these tools helps identify what's being exposed and gives you a chance to clean it up before an attacker takes advantage of it. So DNS enumeration isn't just a tool for hackers, it's also a defensive strategy. The more you know about what your domain is leaking, the better you can plug those holes and protect your network. Let's break that down. Dig is like the Swiss Army knife of DNS tools. It gives you everything from A records to MX and NS entries. Host is quicker and simpler for domain to IP lookups. ENS lookup is older but still reliable for checking domain resolutions. Together, these tools can tell you how a company's online presence is built. All right, now let's talk about network mapping, a crucial step in both offensive and defensive cybersecurity. Think of network mapping like creating a detailed floor plan of a building before you go inside. It's all about identifying what devices exist on a network, how they're connected, and what roles they play. For attackers, mapping out a network gives them a big picture view of the environment. They can spot valuable targets like database servers, domain controllers, or misconfigured endpoints. But here's the twist. Network defenders use this same technique to stay one step ahead. By understanding the layout of their own network, security teams can identify weak spots, isolate critical assets, and plan effective defenses. When we say mapping, we're talking about discovering devices, routers, switches, servers, IP addresses, and the pathways that connect them. This process helps uncover shadow IT, devices or systems that were set up but forgotten about, and those can become major vulnerabilities if left unmanaged. It also reveals how traffic flows across the network. Are your database servers directly reachable from the internet? If so, that's a red flag. Should sensitive systems be segmented behind firewalls or VLANs? Network mapping gives you the clarity to make those decisions. The goal here is simple: visibility. You can't protect what you can't see. And whether you're a penetration tester, mapping a target, or a sysadmin trying to lock down your infrastructure, having a clear view of your network is the first step towards smart, proactive security. In Linux, Netstat and SS help you see live connections and open ports. Traceroute shows how packets travel across the internet to reach a host, which can uncover firewalls and routers along the way. These tools are essential for mapping both internal and external networks. Let's get into banner grabbing, one of those techniques that sounds simple but can reveal a ton of useful information. Imagine you're connecting to a server and it automatically responds with a greeting. That little message, called a banner, often tells you what service is running, the version, maybe even the operating system. From a cybersecurity angle, that's like handing over your playbook to an attacker. So why do banners matter? Well, many services, like web servers, FTP, SSH, or mail servers, announce themselves when a connection is made. For example, connecting to a web server might reveal it's running Apache 2.4.41 on Ubuntu. If you know that version has a vulnerability, now you've got a potential entry point. Cyber criminals use banner grabbing to identify vulnerable software, especially if patching is neglected. But ethical hackers and defenders use it too, just in the opposite direction. It helps you see what your systems are exposing and lets you reduce that risk by configuring them more securely. There are a few solid ways to mitigate this risk. One is to suppress or modify the banner so it doesn't give away sensitive details. Tools like Server Mask can help with this. Another approach is to disable unnecessary services entirely. After all, if it's not needed, it shouldn't be running in the first place. Bottom line, banner grabbing shows how little things, like a server's greeting, can open the door to bigger problems if you're not paying attention. Next up, we've got OS fingerprinting, and this one's pretty slick. It's all about figuring out what operating system a remote machine is running without physically accessing it. Attackers, penetration testers, and defenders all use this technique to assess systems and tailor their strategies. So how does it work? Every operating system has its own unique way of handling network traffic. Things like how it responds to a malformed packet or what TCP/IP options it sets during communication. By sending carefully crafted packets and analyzing the responses, tools like Nmap can guess the OS with surprising accuracy. This is a big deal in cybersecurity. If an attacker knows you're running Windows Server 2016 or Ubuntu 18.04, they can look up known vulnerabilities for that exact version and target their exploits. That's why fingerprinting is often one of the first active steps in a penetration test. It helps focus the attack plan. From a defense perspective, this means two things. First, you should monitor your network for scanning behavior, especially tools that are doing OS detection. Second, you can make OS fingerprinting harder by tweaking your network stack, using firewalls or proxies to obfuscate or block those giveaways. Also, identifying legacy systems through OS fingerprinting can help security teams prioritize patching and upgrades. Outdated OS versions often lack modern security features, so spotting them early is key to hardening your environment. So whether you're hunting vulnerabilities or trying to cover your tracks, OS fingerprinting is a powerful technique, and being aware of it is the first step toward securing your systems. LDAP is a protocol used to centralize user management. Instead of managing logins on every machine, you can control access from a single place. It's widely used in enterprise environments for authentication and user data. It simplifies things, and when secured properly, it boosts your system's defense. Here's the basic flow. When a user logs in, the application sends their credentials to the LDAP server. If they match the stored info, access is granted. This makes it easier to manage large networks of users, and if encrypted, it keeps everything safe in transit. Let's talk about OSINT, or open source intelligence, a key part of any good cybersecurity assessment. OSINT is all about gathering information from public sources. We're talking websites, forums, leaked data repositories, job postings, and yes, even social media. Social platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, and GitHub can leak more information than you'd think. Employees might post about internal tools, upcoming changes, or technologies they're using. A simple tweet or LinkedIn update can give away the name of an email server or even a VPN IP range. Attackers love this kind of info. It helps them build a profile of the target without ever touching the network. Now, on the Linux side of things, we have some amazing tools to automate OSINT gathering. You may already know the Harvester, Recon-NG, and Maltego, but another one worth spotlighting is Spiderfoot. It's a powerful and flexible OSINT automation tool that runs beautifully on Linux. Spiderfoot can scan hundreds of data sources like DNS records, IP blocks, email leaks, dark web listings, breached databases, and more. Just give it a domain, IP, or name, and it pulls together a comprehensive footprint. You can run it from the terminal or use the web-based GUI for more control. Plus, it can integrate with services like Shodan and Have I Been Pound for even deeper data. From a cybersecurity defense angle, Spiderfoot is incredibly useful for self-auditing. It shows you what your organization is unknowingly exposing online, so you can clean it up before attackers find it. It's also great for red teams and penetration testers who want a wide-angle lens on their target. Bottom line, OSINT tools like Spiderfoot don't just collect data, they turn that data into actionable insight. And in today's world, where attackers are watching your public footprint just as closely as your firewall, that's a serious advantage. Let's shift gears and talk about honeypots, one of the most fascinating tools in a cybersecurity pro's toolkit. A honeypot is basically a decoy system designed to look like a real, vulnerable machine. It's not meant to serve customers or host critical data. It's there to bait attackers, catch their moves, and gather intelligence without risking your actual infrastructure. Now, here's why honeypots are such a game changer in cybersecurity. They flip the script. Instead of just defending and reacting, you're now proactively studying the enemy. When someone tries to probe your network and hits the honeypot, you get to watch how they move, what tools they use, what vulnerabilities they test for, and how persistent they are. In a Linux environment, honeypots can be configured to mimic services like SSH, FTP, or even full-blown web apps. The beauty is that they're isolated from your production systems, so if someone does try something malicious, they're wasting their time, and you're collecting threat intelligence that can be used to improve your real defenses. Honeypots also help with early detection. If someone's poking around your network and ends up inside a honeypot, that's a huge red flag. It can trigger alerts or logs, helping you respond before they reach anything valuable. They're also great for distracting or slowing down attackers, especially automated bots or scanners that don't realize they've hit a trap. Just remember, honeypots are only effective if they're set up to look real but remain secure. If an attacker detects it's fake, they'll move on. And if it's too loosely configured, they might use it as a launchpad into the rest of your network, which defeats the purpose. There are three main types. Low-interaction honeypots emulate specific services and are easy to manage. High-interaction honeypots mimic full systems for deeper analysis but carry more risk. And client honeypots go out and search for malicious servers, useful for spotting drive-by attacks. Linux has some excellent honeypot tools. Honeyed is great for simulating networks. So to bring it all together, reconnaissance and footprinting are about building knowledge. Whether you're attacking or defending, you need to know what's out there. These techniques help you do that safely, effectively, and with purpose. Combine those methods with tools like LDAP and honeypots, and you've got a solid toolkit for cybersecurity in Linux. You're learning to see your system the way an attacker might, and that's the first step towards strong defense.